Okay, so I'm going to talk about what it means. I'm primarily talking about inclusive communities, just because putting effort into inclusion, you're going to get diversity as a result. That's how we gather a diverse group of people, is by making everyone feel welcome. So diversity, that's who actually showed up, who is here. But inclusion is who can be here, who's able to participate, who feels welcome to participate. And with that, we need to consider cultural differences, time zones, language differences, internet speed, accessibility of transportation, physical abilities, and other life circumstances. And then there's community. A simple definition is just a group of people all gathered around a shared interest. That could be a hobby, a fandom, your school, your job, maybe a social cause, a religion, or an open source project. But really, community is the connection between people. And those can be weak connections, they can be strong connections. They might be temporary, they could last your whole life. But really, it's not just a group of people, it's that connection. And the connections can grow into an ecosystem with the power to change lives and make projects successful. Ultimately, humans are social animals. We thrive in groups, we naturally form communities, and we are happier and healthier when we're together. And that's not just me making it up, that's actually backed by science. For example, we have the Harvard study of adult development. It's been running for over 80 years. It started in 1938. It's the longest study we have of adult life. There's been a lot of things that we've learned. I encourage you to go read about it if you're interested. But the key takeaway is that the best predictor of a long, healthy, and happy life is connection with others. We also have interventions like cognitive behavioral therapy and acceptance and commitment therapy, which encourage people to increase social connections to improve their mental health. And these are recognized best practices in the field of psychology. There's also a lot of research about that. So again, if you're interested, please go read more. That's not what I'm going to cover today. But to sum it up, we are happier and healthier in groups. We naturally gravitate toward each other. We want to connect, even if we're not trying to. So we can foster an inclusive community and quickly create healthy connections by keeping a focus on some values. We have things like inclusion and diversity, obviously, openness, patience, understanding. The list goes on. You can think of a lot of things that might matter, and the specific values are going to depend on your community and your group that you're trying to gather together. There's some benefits, both at the individual level and for projects. Participating at the individual level, we just talked about, can improve your health. It can make you happier. It can make you feel better. But you can also get some help learning new things. You can get some help with your career. Imagine applying for a job cold and all the rejections that you might face there versus applying with a warm recommendation from somebody who you know from your community or who you've maybe worked with already. It also gives you a place to show off your side projects and maybe find collaborators and grow those into bigger projects. And that takes us to the project level, where you can create positive associations with your project or your brand if it grows into a whole company. You can find contributors, you can find supporters. Those people might become brand ambassadors. And you can also find really valuable, trusted sources of real-world feedback. But a warning. If you don't intentionally make your community inclusive, it may unintentionally become exclusive. If people are excluded, the message they receive is, you're not welcome here, this isn't for you. And that's going to make them think that the project isn't for them, or your brand or your company isn't for them. And even if you're consciously trying to form an inclusive community, you still need to be very careful. You need to let people know what you're doing and where to find you. You need to be aware of unconscious bias, communication gaps or poor communication, negative attitudes. And you also need to be willing to accept feedback and show that you take that feedback seriously by making real changes in response. Keeping all of that in mind, I have a few suggestions to set your community up for success and to make maintenance a little bit easier if you're in a leadership position in that community. And most of this is going to be about online communities. Part of that is just because that's my experience. That's where I spend most of my time. But also because when you put a community online, you open it up to a lot of people. Just like when you put your code out on GitHub, everyone can contribute. When you put your community online, everyone can contribute. The first one is choose a platform. You're going to have to choose something that makes sense to you, some common options: GitHub discussions, Reddit, Discord, X, and Slack. But just keep in mind where people might already be. So for example, if you're building something that's going to get used by developers, GitHub is probably a logical choice. I would go with GitHub discussions. But if you're building something that's meant to be used by gamers or streamers, then Discord might make more sense. The point here is just make it as easy as possible for people to find your community space and start participating. The second one is set some rules and enforce them. Enforcing them isn't fun, but we have to do it. First, just set the rules. Think about the community you want to build. Think about those values that are going to matter for that kind of community. Decide what behaviors are encouraged and which things you're not going to allow. And then use all of that to write a code of conduct. And then you need to make sure that you publish it someplace where existing community members can find it, but also you need to make sure that it's put in front of every new person who joins so that they know the rules up front. And that's going to help you prevent some bad behavior before it starts. But unfortunately, you're still going to end up having to enforce violations when you see them. In that case, it's going to do two things. You're going to immediately handle a bad situation and correct it, but it's also going to set the tone so that people know that they can expect a safe and welcoming space in your community, and that helps build trust. Third is to set the standard for good behavior, and I know this one seems pretty obvious, but lead by example. Welcome people, be patient, do the things that you want your community members to do. Basically, model your code of conduct. Do the things that you want to see more of. Don't do the things that you said were not allowed. The fourth thing is give people a reason to come back. Being nice, it's going to make people like you, but it's not going to make them come back. You need to have reasons that they're going to come more than one time. They might come to you to find an answer one time. Why are they going to come again when they don't need an answer? So come up with some kind of content series is what I would recommend here. It could be something really relevant to your project, like changelog summaries. It could be something related to just the project, but maybe in a less specific way, like a weekly dev challenge showing off your work. Or it could be something very loosely related, like a workspace photo challenge or something, and come up with some small reward that people could get for participating, whether it's just some recognition or maybe swag or something. Every community is going to be a little different. You're going to have to play around with this and do some trial and error. I do have some tips for what has worked for me working with the Vercel community, and you can use these as maybe some inspiration and tailor them to what you need to do. Some examples of just recurring content, right? Written content, very cheap. So I do posts on a weekly basis highlighting community member creations, changelog announcements so that people know what changes have been made, some upcoming events, whether it's community events or something that we're running, and then other resources, blog posts and tutorials and things like that I've seen in the past week. And I do that every week. It's changed over time in response to some feedback and some things I've learned about what works and what doesn't. Early on, I was focusing a little too much on what Vercel and Next.js were doing and not enough on what the community was doing. So I've shifted that focus to be a lot of highlight on community projects. But the important thing here is that it gives me a weekly opportunity to emphasize that everyone is welcome and everyone has something to contribute. I also do some monthly posts. I do a V0 changelog. I do some threads for job seekers and hiring managers. And then my favorite one is the announcement for people at the top of the leaderboard. So I was talking earlier about setting those behaviors that you want to see more of. The people at the top of the leaderboard are the people who took the encouragement and ran with it. They're the people doing the best work for the community, helping each other, doing amazing things themselves. and we recognize that on a monthly basis. They get a t-shirt, but they also, more importantly, get a little badge that they can put next to their name. So everyone else in the community knows that this is a trustworthy, helpful person. And then other people see that and say, well, hey, how can I get in on that? I want the t-shirt, I want the badge. And then you see new faces rising up the leaderboard the next month. And naturally, tech support is going to end up being the first thing that brings a lot of people to your community. And it's important to provide that support, but also use it as an opportunity for more social interaction. You could teach people about debugging skills or a little bit more about your project that they maybe didn't know. But it's important to talk like a human, and it reminds people that there are actually real people behind the project. I have to talk a little bit about AI. It's 2025, it's unignorable. We do use a little bit of AI to help make this job easier for ourselves. My teammates, Anshuman and Jacob, have a tool that they've made for us that suggests potential solutions, but we don't post those directly, we don't post those automatically. We take the suggestion, we verify that it's actually correct, and then we use that solution in a human written answer to a question. Important is don't replace humans with bots, please. People know, they can tell. It'll turn into just a help desk instead of a community. No one will stick around, the whole thing will fall apart. So be human. If an inclusive community is your goal, that work never ends. It requires curiosity, willingness to be uncomfortable and learn along the way, and make changes, admit when we make mistakes. But communities change every day, and every new person who joins your community brings their own unique value. Your job is to create an environment and conditions that bring out that value so that it's recognized and integrated into your community. If you have questions, I'm still going to be around the rest of the day. I'll be around for the next few days. Feel free to stop me in the hall, but I'm also online, so if you look, you can find me. And before I go, I just have one more thing to ask of all of you. I want each of you to look at the communities that you belong to and think about where you can create more space, where you can listen more deeply to other people, and where you can invite voices that have not been heard. Or more simply, just please be kind to each other. Thank you.